There's an interesting consequence of the correspondence theory of truth that we should consider, and it'll help us get a firmer grasp on our notion of truth, and it's called the one truth value principle. And a way of stating it is OTV for one truth value. That's the name of the principle. Every proposition has exactly one truth value. It's either true, it's false, but it's not both. And from the fact that it's either true or false, you know it has to be at least one of those. And this is a consequence of the correspondence theory of truth. Take any proposition. If it correctly describes the way the world is, the way the facts are, it's true. If it doesn't, it's false. Now, this principle makes people nervous for various reasons, but let's consider one example that they think about that makes them very nervous. Consider the proposition that the number of people on the island of Manhattan at noon on January 25th, 1652 was even. If you're wondering, the choice of January 25th, 1652 is perhaps, or at least there's some historical evidence that leads us to believe that that was the date on which the Europeans bought the island of Manhattan from the Native Americans, who were there for a chest full of trinkets. Not a bad investment. Getting the island of Manhattan worth a lot of money today. Okay, but when we think, let's think about that. The number of people on the island of Manhattan at noon on January 25th, 16 was even. What do you mean was even? That is, that number was an even number. And leads some people to think, well, wait a second. Was the number even, or was the number odd? How many people were on the island? I mean, what would make it true is if it was an even number, a number that was evenly divisible by 2. So if at noon, exactly at noon on that date, if there were 24 people on the island, divided by 2, that gives you 12 evenly. That would make that true. But if there were 25 people on the island precisely at that time, it's false. And it leads people to worry. Is that true or is that false? And that leads people to think, well, wait a second. Maybe that proposition does not have a truth value. But at least what a position one can take, and I think one ought to take, and it's reasonable, can be expressed as follows. That is, whether anyone knows or even can possibly know the answer to the question, right? How the heck are we going to know the answer to the question? Nobody was taking a census. Nobody was guarding the island of Manhattan in 1652. Nobody had the slightest idea how many people were there. And anybody who might have had an idea is long dead, right? So whether anybody knows that or even can know that, the answer to that question doesn't mean that there isn't a correct answer. It means that it was either true or it's false. Perhaps we have no way of determining the truth value of proposition number 14. The number of people on the island of Manhattan at noon on January 25th, 1652 was even. We might have no way of figuring it out, no way of determining it, but it doesn't mean that it's neither true nor false. That is, truth and falsity is not relative to anybody's knowledge. Not yours, not mine, and not anybody living in 1652.